All right, so now let's talk about a little more, details of MapReduce, how exactly it works code wise, right? Not exactly code wise, but we have just talked theoretically. Now, how exactly it, kind of generalizes multiple problems into this paradigm. Okay, so basically, input to MapReduce is in the form of key and value. Okay, your map function gets a key and a value as input, and it gives a list of key and value as output. Okay, so I'll explain in detail with an example, but just for now try to memorize it that your map function gets a key and value as input. Okay, and it gives as the output a list of keys and values. Your reduce function gets a key and a list of values as input. Okay, and it will emit a list of keys and values as output. Now, what does this mean? So the best way to talk about this is, let me just, so let's continue with this example, right? Let's continue with this example. So now, instead of keeping it a theoretical problem, let's say my input data is you know uh, we said that we have a lot of coins, right? So my input data is like numbers, 1 2 5 1 1 2. So these denote the coins. So whenever there is one, that means it's a 1 rupee coin. Whenever there is two, that means it's a 2 rupee coin. So this is just a series of numbers, right? Random numbers. So this is my input data, right? And there are a lot of numbers, there are millions of numbers, and my target is to find frequency of each number. So now this is the same problem, right, guys? So if you remember, in the last session we talked about every problem having two parts. One is the business logic, another is the technical part, right? So this is my business problem, that I have a lot of coins and I want to figure out how many coins of every denomination do I have. This is the technical problem. So I have converted this business problem into a technical problem, where what I'm saying is my input data is in the form of numbers. Every number denotes one coin, and my target is to find the frequency of each number. Right? How do I do it? Using MapReduce. Right? What is my map function and what is my reduce function? So when I say every map takes a key and a value as input, right? Now what I'm going to do here is map will take, so I'm just using a data type here, text. Okay, text key and text value, although it will be something else in actual code that we'll discuss tomorrow, but it is again going to be a dummy code, right? But now in the form of actual keys and values that MapReduce expects. So what I'm saying is my map function takes a key and value as input. Now in this case, if my input is in this form, what is going to be my key and value? So what happens is, generally by default, if you have an input file, right, whenever it is processed using MapReduce, the offset within the file goes as key and every line goes as value. Okay, so I'm just going to shorten it so that we can work on the complete example. So let's say we have just these numbers, right? This is our input data set, complete input data set, right, which we want to process. So my map takes key and value as input. Now key is the offset within the file, which I don't care about. I don't care which offset is there within the file. I just care about the value. Okay, and value is going to be one record at a time. Okay, so first it will be called, my map function will be called with 1, then with 2, then with 5, then again with 1, then again with 1, then again with 2, and then again with 5. So inside my map function, And also we said that output of map is a list of key and values, right? It's a list of keys and values. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say write. Now my key is going to be my number that I got. So I got value as, I mean, the value will contain the actual record, right? So let me say my coin, or in other words, denomination is equal to value. Is that correct? Because every record will be presented to me as value, and I don't care what is the key. I can just ignore the key here. Whatever is the input to the mapper, I'm just ignoring it, and every line will be presented to me as a value. So every line, what is every line? It is the denomination of the coin. So what I'm saying is my denomination is equal to value, right? And count is equal to 1. By default, when I got one record, that means I got one coin of denomination 1. Similarly, when I get this record, it means I got one coin of denomination 2. So for every record, my count is 1, right? And what I'm going to do is I need to output a list of keys and values. But in this case, there is only one key and value, and my key is denomination and my value is count, right? So when I pass this input through this map function, what I'm going to get, I'm going to get key and value. So it's a list of keys and values. One is first key is 1, count is 1. Then key is 2, count is 1. Key is 5, count is 1. 1, 1. Right? So my input was offset within the file as key and record as value. Right? I ignored the key and I converted the value into the output key. If you see clearly, this was my value as input to the mapper, and it became my key as output to the mapper when I am outputting, right? So this is the output of my mapper. Now what is the, let me just write it here, output of mappers, right? And what is the input to reducer? Now just look at this slide. Input to the reducer is one key and a list of values, right? One key and a list of values. So which means what framework does is between the output of mapper and input of reducer, there is something called MR framework, right? MR framework is coming into the picture. Details of which, how it exactly works, that is something we'll get into later. But for now, let's say some magic happens here, and that magic converts this into a key and list of values. And what is that? Corresponding to every key. So whenever the key was 1 here, right? So whenever the key was 1 here, this record, and this record, framework will pick all those records where key is same, okay, and it will put all the values into a list. So corresponding to key 1, there are 3 records and all 3 of them have value 1, right? So this is one record to the reducer. Similarly, corresponding to 2, it will pick this record and this record. It will say 1 comma 1, right? So let me just write here key and list of values, right? Similarly for 5, it will say this record and this record, right? So for 5, it will say 1 and 1. So this is going to be input to my reducer. So if my mapper was something like this, right, then what is going to be my reducer? My reduce function will have, let's say, a text key and a list of text, or it could be int. We'll talk about data types in tomorrow's session, as value. And now I need to write the logic here, whatever I want to do with this input. So what I'm going to do is, now when I say write here, I am writing the final output. Okay, and what I'm writing before that, what I'm going to do is, I'll iterate on the list of int, right? Or in other words, I'll iterate on the value. Actually, let me write for loop for all the entries in value sum plus is equal to value I, right? Or value at that index. So after this loop, what I'll get is, when I got this record as input to the reducer, my key is 1 and my value is this list, right? So after iterating on this loop, I will get 3 as the sum. So what I can do here is write key and sum as output, which means the output of reducer is going to be 1 3. Similarly for 2 it will be 2, and for 5 it will be again 2, right? For 1 I will sum all these numbers, for 2 I'll sum these numbers, for 5 I'll sum these numbers. So I got the final output as this, which is for every denomination what is the count.